Okay, so today we're going to dive into a story about money that, honestly, has almost nothing to do with spreadsheets, fancy stock charts. It's really about two men, a janitor and a Harvard-educated executive, and how one ended up a multi-millionaire philanthropist while the other went completely broke.
So on one side, you've got Ronald Reed, a janitor and gas station attendant. And on the other, you have Richard Fuscone, a finance exec from Merrill Lynch with an MBA from Harvard. I mean, you'd think you know exactly how this story plays out, right? The highly educated finance guy's got to have it all figured out. Well, get ready for a twist. Ronald Reed's life was about as simple as it gets. He spent 25 years fixing cars, another 17 sweeping floors at JCPenney. He lived in the same two-bedroom house for pretty much his whole life, and his main hobby? Chopping firewood. Just a quiet, simple, totally unassuming guy. But when he passed away in 2014, at 92 years old, this humble janitor left behind a fortune of over $8 million. Yeah, and most of it went to his local hospital and library. The question on everyone's mind was just how? All right, now let's flip the coin and look at Richard Fuscone. He was the total opposite. Harvard MBA, top executive at Merrill Lynch. I mean, this guy was so successful he retired in his 40s to get into philanthropy. He was even on one of those 40 under 40 lists for successful business people. On paper, he was the guy who knew everything there is to know about money. And you know what? He lived like it. His mansion in Connecticut was almost 18,000 square feet. It had 11 bathrooms, 2 swimming pools, 7 garages. Get this, it cost over $90,000 a month just for upkeep. We're talking about a life of extreme leveraged luxury. And then 2008 happened. The financial crisis hit, and Richard Fuscone, the Harvard MBA, the guy with the massive house and the perfect resume, went completely bankrupt. All that high debt, all those illiquid assets, they were just wiped out. The entire life he built just crumbled. So this brings us to the big puzzle, right? A janitor with zero formal training becomes a secret multimillionaire, while the certified financial expert loses everything. How on earth is that possible? What did Ronald Reed know that Richard Fuscone just didn't? Well, the answer has very little to do with how smart you are and everything to do with how you behave. It's the surprising key that explains how a janitor could totally outperform a Wall Street genius.
There's this quote from Morgan Housel's book that just captures it perfectly. Doing well with money has a little to do with how smart you are and a lot to do with how you behave. See, Ronald Reed was patient. Richard Fuscone was greedy. And that simple difference in their behavior turned out to be way more powerful than any gap in their education or experience. You know, we're all taught to think of finance like it's physics, with these hard rules and laws. You put the right data in, you get the right answer out. But it's not a hard science at all. It's a soft skill. It's much more like psychology, where how you feel and the habits you have matter so much more than the numbers on a spreadsheet.
And to really get this, we need to understand a pretty fundamental idea. No one is crazy. It might seem like people do absolutely wild things with their money, but their actions almost always make perfect sense to them, and it's all based on their own unique mindset.
And here's the crucial point. Every single one of us tells ourselves a story about why we do what we do with our money. And that story, it's shaped by everything. Our parents, our generation, where we grew up, the luck we've had. So what looks completely irrational to you might be perfectly logical to someone with a different life story.
Think about it this way, and this quote is just fantastic. Your personal experiences with money make up maybe 0.0000001% of what's happened in the world, but maybe 80% of how you think the world works. We've all just experienced this tiny sliver of economic history, but that one little sliver forms almost our entire worldview about money. We take our own limited personal experience and we project it out as if it's some kind of universal truth.
Let's actually look at some data to see how this plays out in the real world. You can see exactly how someone's birth year can create a completely different but equally valid truth about how the financial world works.
So, for example, if you were born in 1970, the stock market grew tenfold during your teens and 20s. You'd probably think stocks are these incredible wealth-generating machines. But if you were born in 1950, the market was basically flat during that same period of your life, you might think stocks are a total waste of time. So who's right? The thing is, they both are, based on their own direct experience. And it's the exact same thing with inflation. If you were born in the 60s, you saw prices triple when you were young. You're probably always going to worry about the rising cost of living. But if you were born in 1990, inflation has been a non-issue for pretty much your entire life. It might not even be on your radar. different experiences, different realities.
So if our personal experiences are so narrow, you'd think, okay, we can just rely on a long history of collective wisdom, right? Well, not really. Because when it comes to modern personal finance, we're all just getting started.
So many of us feel like we're just bad at money. But the truth is, the entire system is brand new. I mean, the whole concept of saving and investing for your own retirement is barely a few decades old. We're not crazy. We're all just newbies trying to figure this whole thing out.
Just look at this timeline. The 401k, which is like the bedrock of American retirement, wasn't even created until 1978. And the Roth IRA, 1998. If the Roth IRA were a person, it would barely be old enough to drink. We're expecting ourselves to be experts in a game that was pretty much invented yesterday.
So, what's the big takeaway from all this for you? Well, first, your behavior, your patience, your humility, your long-term thinking, that is way more important than how smart you are. Second, try to understand why other people make the money decisions they do. Their crazy choices probably make perfect sense through their lens. And finally, cut yourself some slack. Seriously, we're all kind of winging it in this new financial world.
And that leaves us with one last question to think about. What's the strongest belief you hold about money or investing or saving? Now really ask yourself, where did that belief come from? What moment in your life burned that lesson into your brain? Because understanding that's the first step to mastering the true psychology of money.